Welcome to the Mango Effect podcast, where every week we talk about the path to living a limitless life and having the freedom to do it your way. No topics are off limits. We get into the practical, the hypothetical, and the downright juicy stuff. I'm Mindy Rosser, your host and lifestyle cheerleader, and I'm here today to share some big news and talk about why I'm going back to school. You heard me right. I am going back to school. Oh my goodness. This is something I've been thinking about for a very long time, actually many years. When I was right around 30, I actually wanted to go back to school and I really wanted to get into Harvard. And I was able to pass the test to get into a Harvard online school, and I wanted to go back and get my MBA. And I just thought really hard about it at the time. I had a very young child, new family, and I thought, you know what, now is just not the right time. And another thing that really stood out to me was that I really did not feel strongly about an MBA and business and really going that direction. Like, I just did not feel confident. And come to find out, sometimes it's really important that we do listen to our intuition, because in that moment, my intuition was telling me, Mindy, this is not the right thing. This is not the right thing for you. I sat on it. I talked it over with my partner. I talked it over with my parents. It felt good. It sounded great on paper. It seemed like the way to get to the next step in my career. But when I really thought about it and my skills, like, I'm a marketer, okay? That's what I've been doing since I was 20-something. I've been in this field for a very long time. I do not have a traditional degree. This is embarrassing to admit, I went to a seminary. Let's just call it that for the sake of definition. A seminary, an unaccredited institution, 2 unaccredited institutions. And I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Biblical Studies. And as some of you know, I am definitely not religious. I am much more on the agnostic, atheist side of the spectrum. And so for me, I haven't even talked about that degree because I'm like, it doesn't really count for anything. Like, if I tried to take those credits and apply them to a school, they would just look at them like, okay, you're starting from scratch here. There's nothing here that we can use. So in my mind, I thought, it just doesn't make sense. I technically have finished and gotten a college degree, but if I wanted to apply for anything else, like if I wanted to change careers, if I wanted to get an MBA, literally I do need to start from scratch, kind of go through undergrad and go from there. So in my mind, Harvard was just not the right choice at that time. So fast forward to now, I have just turned 36. Yeah, whopping 36. And I've been having these thoughts. I've been having these intuitions. I've been listening to my gut. You've heard me talk a lot about a lot of changes that I've made to my business and just feeling like the need to shift my business towards more of that agency model, working one-on-one with clients versus launching and scaling in group programs. During that process, what I have not talked much about, because I really wanted to feel it out. I really wanted to make sure this was something that was going to stick, that this wasn't something that I was just fantasizing about, that it was something that I really believed from the bottom of my heart that this is what I was meant to do. And I'd had a lot of deep conversations with my partner, my best friend, and we have been talking like, business is great, but it's just not where my heart is. So we were talking a lot about this, and we've had a lot of mental health stuff. You've heard me talk about that here on the podcast, where my son is going through some stuff right now. My husband has bipolar. My mom has bipolar. A lot of people in my family have bipolar, schizophrenia, schizoaffective. We got a lot of mental stuff going on. And something that I have always found fascinating, and I used to joke about it, if I could go back to school, I'd go back for psychology or psychiatry. And so I made that comment the other day, and my husband was like, why don't you? I said, what? He said, why don't you go back to school for psychiatry? He said, I see you there, like you've heard me talk about on the podcast, like watching psychiatry presentations, and like, I love the brain. Like, talk to me about the brain, talk to me about mental health, mental wellness, mental well-being. Like, what's the difference between ADHD versus bipolar and pediatrics? These are the things that keep me up at night that I really enjoy, and the topics that I have found fascinating ever since I was a little person. And so thinking about it, I was like, because it takes too long. He's like, wait, okay, Mindy, figure it out. How long would it take you? Say you wanted to become a psychiatrist. How long would that take you? Hey, quick Google search later. I'm like, well, undergrad, med school, residency, probably 10, 12 years. If I'm fast tracking it, maybe let's say 10 if I was really being aggressive and I could get good grades and go through really fast, maybe. And depending on the residency and the program, it's like, well, okay, so you're going to be 10, 12 years older. So let's say 48. At 48, do you want to be a medical doctor? Do you want to be a psychiatrist practicing medicine at 48? He's like, you're going to get that age anyways. Like, do you want to be a doctor or do you want to keep doing what you're doing full time? Like, what do you want to do here? And I thought about it and I'm like, I want to be a doctor. And it was just kind of one of these moments I'm like, yeah, I would totally dig being a psychiatrist. And so, I did some more searching. Okay, so what about these people that do and become a doctor as a second career? What does that look like? I did some searches. I sat with it. I did some journaling. When I have something in my mind, I am the type that just goes like crazy. So all my free time, I'm just like looking at all the stuff, doing my research, recon, pros and cons list, journaling, reading books, watching YouTube videos, articles, people's experiences. What does it actually take? What kind of grades do you need to get? Oh, what about the MCAT? All of these things. I'm immersed. And I keep thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I could do this. Like, I was that kid that wanted to be valedictorian in school. And because I had transferred from another school, I was not allowed to even become a valedictorian, even if my grades were perfect. So that was very discouraging. But I was that kid that would go up to the teacher if I got a 97 on a test and there was one answer that I should have gotten right, I would go argue with the teacher until they gave me the extra 3. I would also argue with the teacher for extra credit. If I got like a 100, but there was an extra credit that I should have gotten right, I'd go argue for that too. So I was that kid. I was the 4.0, like, okay. Like, grades have always been pretty, not easy for me, but I can pick up on concepts and I'm like, okay, I think I have the mental faculties for this. So why not? So I think sometimes, like, this is not just about a Mindy show and what I'm doing, but I think sometimes what we do is we put these limitations on ourselves. We think we're too old. We think we're too young. We think we're too this, we're too that. When really, if we opened up our mind and we said, hey, this is like the same question when I moved to Hawaii. If I could live anywhere in the world, where would I go? Hawaii. Great. Done. Let's do it. If I could be anything I wanted to be, what would that be? Psychiatrist. Great. Can we do this? Is this viable? Let's look into this a little more. Let's do our homework. Let's do our research. Yep, that's going to be a shift in lifestyle for about 10, 12 years. Is that worth it? Yeah, it's worth it. Then let's do it. And I think when you approach life from that perspective, it's very empowering because when you realize something is not where your heart is or what you should be doing, and in my heart of hearts, I know that's what I'm supposed to be doing, and I just didn't recognize it. And it took my son, actually, we're getting real here. It took my son to go through some mental health crises lately to see it. And there was nobody. I'm going to tear up here. This is not good on a podcast. There was nobody for my child to see. There was no child psychiatrist on the island who my doctor could recommend me to go see. And that broke my heart because I know there are so many other kids out there. There are so many other grown-ups out there. There are a lot of adolescents out there who are struggling, especially with mental health these days, and there are not enough people to go around. And when that is something that is near and dear to your heart and you want to help more people like that, like I want to help more Dougies, like my little guy. I want to be there for them. And if I have the mental faculties to do this and I have the tenacity and I'm willing to do this, I can use my background towards this and it would be an asset. Why not? And too often we stop ourselves before we even try because we think it's too lofty or we don't trust our gut or we don't trust our intuition. That's something I talk about a lot here is what is your heart telling you? And then also fact checking. Like you have to also figure out what is viable and what do you have the capabilities to do. Like for me, I don't have what it takes to be a 7-8 figure entrepreneur who's running a business. It's just not in my nature. It's not who I'm meant to be. And as much as I try to force myself into that box, it's a box. And it is not authentic, and it is not really who I'm meant to be. Yes, I'm going to continue running my business. That's not going anywhere for the foreseeable future, probably until med school. If things get crazy, then I may have to, either take my client load down or make some shifts there. But I have amazing assistants, virtual assistants who work with me. We have like this great team, and I want to keep that going. So it's not about saying, oh, I'm not doing business anymore. It's literally about making a shift, saying, okay, what's the first step that I have to do to make this happen? It's kind of zooming out and saying, okay, is this what I want to do? And, the beautiful thing about it is looking back in my childhood, there are pieces there that I can see that go, oh, that's why I went through that certain experience. For example, when I was a kid, some of you have heard me talk a little bit about my experience. I grew up in an extreme religious group. Every single week, I'd go with my dad and my mom, my brothers, and we would get sometimes on a bus, sometimes in our car, and we would go drive to a rehabilitation center. Those were a nice word for places that had mentally ill patients, a lot of them, on a number of psychiatric medications, and also some people that were, recuperating physically, a lot of nursing homes and rehabilitation centers. And we would go there every single week, sometimes multiple times per week. And sometimes many of them within a day. Like we'd hit 3 to 4 different homes. And this is really neat because in looking back on that experience, I was like, wow, I've spent at least 10,000 hours, if not more, as a volunteer working with people who, struggled with mental wellness and mental well-being. And now it's coming back to me like, wow. Yeah, I know exactly what it's like. Obviously, I haven't been a doctor in these situations, but I know what it's like to be in that environment. I know what types of things they're struggling with. I've seen a lot of families with people inside and talking with families. I mean, I just understand the dynamics of it. And now it's kind of coming back to me like, wow, all of that experience that I had as a young person. And now I'm going to be circling back to that and being able to go in to a place and be able to help people like this at a different level and also provide very well for my family. Yes, it's a long journey. And do I believe I can get there? Oh, 100%. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, there's no doubt in my mind. There's no other alternative. It's funny because it's like right around my birthday, when I turned 36, it just really hit me. I'm like, okay, I wish this would have hit me sooner. I wish I would have figured this out a while ago. But when it hits you, it's like, you know what? Now is the right time. Am I young enough to do it? Yeah, I am. I'm happy for doing this at 36, being done at 48, probably have 20-ish years thereabouts where I can practice. And how amazing would that be also to show to my kids, like, hey, if you make a change, if you want to do something, go do it. You're not too old. You're not too young. You're not too inexperienced. You're not too anything. You can do what you want to do, especially if it's in your heart. And I think that is key and something that we should all be paying attention to and listening for in our own lives. If you're an entrepreneur and you are called to your business, you should feel like there should be something inside of you that you feel it, like you understand that this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is how you're using your talents. This is how you're using your gifts. This is how you are helping people. This is why you are on this planet. And when you feel that, when you know that, there is no other option. You are doing that thing. You are living out your mission and your purpose every single day. And if you can't say that about what you're doing, take some time to really reflect, because this is something I've been going through for the past few months, like really doing a lot of soul searching, like, something is just not sitting well with me here. I don't know exactly what it is. What is it? Why am I not feeling that satisfaction? Is it just because I need something new and exciting? No, it's not that. You can tell, in your heart of hearts when you are going through a time and a period where you just need to reflect, where you need to figure out, okay, what is next? And when I realized that launching my business and, becoming this 7-figure digital CEO, which you've heard me talk about, if you listen to some episodes that are very early, you can hear me talk about that experience. It just didn't fit. And you know what? I'm so happy that I went all in on that path, because it showed me, like, hey, Mindy, this is not you. This is not how you are supposed to contribute to the world. You are not here to build a business and employ, 20, 30 employees and help them provide for their families. That's just not who you're meant to serve. And does that mean that's a bad option? No, it just means it's not the option for me right now. And maybe down the road, it'll be a good option. But I think you have to pay attention to the signs in front of you. You have to listen. You have to really tune in. And that can be very hard because a lot of times we just get stuck in the daily grind and we just keep going. We just keep saying, okay, well, everything's fine enough. It's okay enough. I'll just keep going here. Or, in time it'll turn around. And yes, there's a time for us to take a chill and relax and downshift a little bit. I feel like that is important. We talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago with go charge yourself. Like when you feel like you're run down, you do need to recharge. But there's a time when you are doing that recharging that you're also listening. You're listening for that small voice. You're listening. You're paying attention. You're really looking for what you are here to do. And if you don't feel 110% that what you're doing is that, you need to keep looking and keep searching. Because when you do find that thing, it's like you're all in. And yeah, I'm about to get really uncomfortable. You're probably going to get to hear about it on the show because I talk about everything. It's great. So it's not going to be easy. Am I thinking like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. I'm just going to go back to school. I'm just going to keep running my business like normal. Everything's going to be fine. And, I'll get my degree. Med school won't be that hard. And I'll do my residency and boom, making money, being a doctor. No. I know it's not going to go according to plan. And right now I'm having those hard conversations. My husband and I are just like, okay, well, what are the details of this? And you know what? Something else that has come up for me, something that I really appreciate right now is having a partner who is my teammate. And I'm just going to bring it up a little bit here because that makes all the difference. When you are doing this soul searching, when you're sitting there shedding those tears, when you're like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, or I know what I'm supposed to do, but it's going to be freaking hard and require a lot of challenges and things that I know are going to be really difficult for me and my family. When you have somebody who's in your corner, and it doesn't have to be your partner, it can be a great friend, it could be another family member, it could be somebody who just cares a lot about you. When you have somebody like that, have a mentor that you can talk things over with and just make sure you're not being rash or being emotional, that this is truly something that you need to explore and that you really want their input on. When we had these discussions, I thought, wow, I am really darn lucky that I have somebody who gets me. First of all, they understand me. They know I don't want to make a rash decision. They also know what my skills are, and they can help me, okay, wait a second. Mindy, you're telling me you want to be like a rocket scientist? You don't even like space. There are things like that people who know us very, very well can help us to see and help us realize when we're going kind of like a little bit off base, like, hey, you may want to think about this. But when you go to the people you trust, you talk about what's on your heart, what you've been thinking. And instead of hiding it, I tend to just push it down and hide it. And I'm learning over time, trust the people that are in your life. They're with you. They want to see you succeed. And when you do that, when you open up your heart, when you talk about these things, when you share your fears, when you share your desires, it's amazing how that can, first of all, impact them because they feel like you are trusting them, but also they can provide you with insights and things that you have not even thought about. And when I had those conversations with my partner and we just continue to talk about them, some days it's funny, I would get my client work done and then it's, a few hours later we're having these conversations and we're trying to figure things out. And just the power of that and the fact that I have a teammate, I have somebody who's on my team. And I'm lucky he's my partner because he lives with me, sees me every day. But some of you, I know you may not have that. So I'm not saying your partner has to be like this. Not everybody is, and not everybody's dynamic is this way. But our dynamic is much more teammate. And we're there to support each other. And how can we do this better? And getting his feedback, he's like, Mindy, you are not using your brain. And I was like, wait a second, I use my brain every day. He's like, Mindy, he's like, let's be honest here. He's like, you got a Ferrari brain and you're taking it on a grandma pace. It's like somebody driving a Ferrari at 30 miles an hour. Come on, you're not living up to your potential. He's like, I see you every day. I see what you're eager to learn. He's like, you need to use your brain. You need to put it towards something that you are completely passionate about. He's like, there is nobody more passionate than you about mental health, mental wellness, psychiatry, mental well-being. I'm that person that's always trying to figure out everyone's diagnoses and put together their meds and oh, but this complication with that complication and what other comorbidities do you have going on here? I really want to understand. Like, I'm just so fascinated by that stuff. Like, please put me in a room with people talking about what's happening with brains, and I want to be one of those smart people in the room that understands all of this. I love to listen to my partner's like conversations with his psychiatrist too. Like, don't tell him this. I try to overhear what they're talking about because she's a smarty, and she will start talking about really fascinating things about how his brain works. And he's like, Mindy, they just go over my head, but I always try to listen in because it's really cool stuff. So I think back to the point of having a partner, having a sounding board, because when you are making decisions like this, you can't be rash. You really have to think hard and long about how is this going to, especially if you have a family, how is this going to affect the other people that are a part of your life in some way, shape, or form? Is this going to affect your location? Am I going to have to move? That's a biggie for me, because you've heard me talk about how much I love Hawaii and what I love about surfing and living here. And is this going to require me to change location so I can get into the best school, so, we can be financially stable while I'm going through this process? All of these things are coming up in very hard questions. A lot of soul searching and number crunching and figuring out our options and what it's going to look like, what it's going to take. But when you know that that's the path, you have to wait, though. You have to wait till you're 100% sure. Give yourself enough time, enough conversation, enough exploration. But when you are ready to run that experiment, you go, all right, here we go. What's the first step? How are we going to do this? It's not if we're going to do this. Like, okay, once you are sure that that's the direction you're going, how are we going to do this? What makes the most sense? How can we do this in the smartest way possible? And what am I going to get from this? Like, what are we going to get from this? How is this going to benefit our family? How is this going to impact our legacy? These are all questions that we all have to explore at some point. And it may not be going back to school for you. But if you're like me and you're like, man, I wish I would have gone back to school, that may be the path. And you know what else? It's kind of funny how the universe brings things into your life. I've actually been coaching a very smart woman. She's, I think multiple doctorates by now. She's just got her MBA. And it's been one of those things. I'm like, she got to go back to school. And I was telling my partner about that. I'm like, she got to go back to school. And he's like, Mindy, you could do the same. Like, come on. So it's funny, like all these little breadcrumbs along the way that kind of lead you down the path. And I knew I had this hunger and drive in me that was saying, Mindy, there's something that you're missing that you just aren't doing yet. And it has to be the right time, though. I feel like now is as good a time as any. It's like now is the time. Yep, you don't want to wait too much longer, Mindy. You're going to be in your 50s by the time this all happens. But I think it's just coming back to the fact that we all have a purpose. We all have a mission. We all have people that we are here to serve. We all have something that we are meant to do. And whether you want to say you want to attribute it to a God or a universe, or if you're woo-woo, great. Okay, can attribute to that. Whether you just think, hey, I want to do something. I want to make an impact. What is that impact meant to be? Are you doing that right now? Because if you aren't, take the time. It is so well worth it, even though it is hard. It is not easy. Asking yourself those tough questions, especially when you're not quite sure how you're going to answer them, it's hard. It's difficult. Especially, I feel like the older I get, it's easy to get set in our ways and just kind of go with the flow. And there is something to be said for going with the flow, but there's also something to be said for if there's something deeper that is not quite right, you need to explore that. And what is that for you? May not be going back to school. It may not be changing your career. It may not be, your relationship. It may be something else. It may be that you're meant to write a book. It may be that you are meant to go for that promotion in your organization. It may be a number of different things, or maybe it's something like a hobby. You need to go learn how to surf. Something outside the norm. Something is calling you. Something is telling you that you need to make a shift. And are you willing to make that shift? Are you willing to take that next step? Are you willing to even explore that idea, even if it's a heck of uncomfortable and requires a lot of change on your part? Because when you are, life becomes this adventure. And I really like how we were talking with my daughter today, and we're just kind of letting her know, okay, this is what it's going to look like. This is what we're talking about. And my partner described it like this. He said, life is about a series of moves. He's like, think of your life as almost like a checkers board. You're always making moves. You can't just skip a move. You always have to make a move. When it's your turn, you make a move. And you can either be proactive or you can wait until you're in a pickle and you have fewer options. So which move are you going to make right now? You should always be proactive. You always want to win. You're not playing this game to lose. You're playing this game to win. So you want to look at all the moves that you can possibly make and figure out what's the next best move. And my daughter, you can see it, like the light in her eyes, like, okay, yeah, the move may be difficult. The changes may not be easy. Switching up our family dynamics and who's doing what. It's not going to look at all the same as it is right now. But guess what? Moves always move us forward in a positive direction. And when we are doing that with the best of intentions, even if we make a move and we think, that's maybe we made a mistake or that's the wrong move, okay, then focus on the next one. And when you do that, when you don't beat yourself up for making moves, life becomes a lot more beautiful. And it's an adventure. You can always make up for a bad move. That's how I see it in my mind too. It's like, okay, yeah, I made a mistake there. I probably shouldn't have gone all in on that or spent that much money there or made that move to that location or focused on this in my business. But you can always go back and fix it. Like that's the thing. Like the game of life is always changing. It's always evolving. You don't just make one move and lose. You can always make a shift, and you can always make a shift in the direction that you want to go. It's never too late. And I think that's, if you can take away anything from today, it is never too late to make a move. And if there's a move you've been waiting to make or not sure if you should make, first of all, talk to somebody. Talk to multiple people. Like I have certain people that are kind of like in my cabinet of advisors, people who know me really, really well. And when I'm considering ideas, I will always throw them out and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Am I crazy? Is this kind of outside the scope? And I know when they give me answers like, well, sleep on it a little bit, see what you come up with. When I get like little answers like that, I think, okay, yeah, this might be something that is not worth paying attention to and maybe just a fleeting thing. But when I get feedback like, Mindy, Dad and I both think that you should definitely go the psychiatry route. You'd be really good. Just like a comment like that, I'm like, all right, maybe I should pay attention here. Let me go a little further down this path and see if that's something I truly want to do. And does that match with my skill set and my heart? So thinking through these things with your life, like I'm curious. I know this is not like the light type topic of conversation this week, but I really just wanted to share, and it was hard. Like I really debated on whether this was the right topic for this week. I think really hard about these episodes and what I want to share. And I felt like this was something that really needed to be talked about because a lot of us are going through changes right now. I hear from so many of you, and you talk to me and you tell me, and thank you for sharing, what is going on? Like what are you facing? Like what decisions do you have to make? There's so much uncertainty out there right now that I think a lot of us are still trying to kind of find our way. Some people call it the post-pandemic. Some people think it's still going on. Wherever you fall on the spectrum of pandemics, it's been difficult. The last few years have brought up a lot of emotions for a lot of people. So if you are feeling a little bit lost, if you are feeling like nobody quite understands you, if you're trying to figure out up from down, just realize you're not alone. We're all in this together. And I want to support you. Like, reach out. Talk to me. Feel free to DM me anytime. I love talking about this stuff. I love just being a listening ear. Like, if you need a cheerleader to say, go for it. If you need somebody to just be in your corner, even if it's just a quick message, just count me in. I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. Because I think the more of us who are doing this work, this very difficult work of soul searching, of really finding our purpose, of really testing things, like going all in, trying things. Some things are going to work. Some things are not going to work. Some things are going to resonate. Some things are not. Sometimes we're going to fall flat in our face, and sometimes we're going to succeed. But we're here for all of it, because that's what life is about. So I just wanted to offer that today, and I hope this is helpful for those of you who are going through transition or considering transition, or just if you're just happy with life, you're like, Mindy, everything's going groovy. This is great. I'm on my mission. I'm living out my purpose every day. Then yay. Like, this is incredible. Like, that's what we're here to do. And we all have a purpose. We all have a mission. We all have a reason for being here. And whether we want to believe that or not, like it's divinely orchestrated, like I'm not really in that camp. A little bit woo, but not that woo. or whether you say, hey, I'm going to pick a path, I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to do it with all my might, and whatever happens, happens. That's why we're here. So feel free to DM me if you want on the Instagrams at Mango Effect Podcast, or if you want to reach my daughter, she's on TikTok at Mango Effect Podcast, so she will flag any messages that come through over there. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the Mango Effect Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. And I would be thrilled if you could write a 5-star review for the show if you love it. We are still a somewhat new show, so any reviews and subscribes we get will definitely help us as we grow. All right, stay tuned for next week. It's going to be a good episode. You're going to love it. And I will talk with you all soon. Bye for now.